Hello students, welcome to Easy Elimu Learning Simplified. I am your teacher, Mr. Stanley Mbogo. So students, I do believe that so far so good. We have been looking at different areas or different topics in grammar. And in this episode, I'd like us to look at adjective clauses. So adjective clauses is also called adjectival clauses. They are also called adjectival clauses or relative clauses. So an adjective clause must meet certain requirements, such as number one, it must contain a subject and a verb. Then number two, an adjective clause uh, begins with a relative pronoun. So it must begin with a relative pronoun like who, whom, whose, that, or which. Or it can as well begin with a relative adverb. And examples of relative adverbs that we have are when, where, and why. So there are examples again that we have in sentences that we can use to identify the adjectival clauses. So remember that we have said that for a clause to be called an adjectival clause, then it must, number one, contain a subject and a verb, and number two, it must begin with either a relative pronoun or a relative adverb. So we have this the sentence, the boy whose dog is the fiercest in the village is my friend. So in that sentence, the part introduced by that is the relative pronoun whose up to the point where we are having that is the noun phrase, that is our adjectival clause, whose dog is the fiercest in the village. Then again, looking at the second example, the river which flow from the Nandi Hills empties itself into Lake Victoria. So again, in the second example, our adjectival clause is which flow from the Nandi Hills. So it is starting with the relative pronoun, again, which, and it ends at Nandi Hills. That is, it ends with a noun phrase. So adjective clauses function as adjectives. So like adjectives, they also give extra information about nouns. Then again, the adjective in this case answers the questions which one, how many, or what kind. So looking at that is a formation of adjectival clause, we understand or we learn that there are two patterns followed by an adjectival clause, meaning that we have got two patterns that we can use to form an adjectival clause. So the first pattern is that is using a relative pronoun or a relative adverb plus a subject plus a verb. So we have an example in sentence. So the sentence begins with the relative pronoun whose. So whose bag was stolen? Whose bag was stolen? So if we try and divide the sentence in different parts, that is, divide the words, we realize that whose is the relative pronoun, then it has been added to the subject, that is the bag, and lastly, our verb or the verbs that we have in that example is was stolen. So in another sentence, why Kim cannot stand that smell? Why Kim cannot stand that smell? So in this example, we have the relative pronoun, or sorry, the relative adverb why, followed by the subject, that is Kim, and lastly, the verbs cannot stand. So that is the first pattern that is followed by an adjectival clause. So the second pattern is talking about a relative pronoun, which in this case is also acting as the subject of the verb, plus the verb itself. So In the sentence, in the example that we have below, there is the relative pronoun who, then the verb that is jumped. So who jumped over the fence? Who is a relative pronoun that is also functioning as a subject. It is also functioning as the subject of the verb. Then there is the verb that is jumped. So in a sentence, dear students, we can have something like Juma is the boy whose bag was stolen. Now, if we are to have a complete sentence, remember in the two examples that we have looked at, or not only the two examples, but in most of the examples of how the adjectival clauses are formed, because we have started with the relative pronouns, the examples cannot express a complete thought. So what we are interested in here is just to see or to learn how we can form these adjectival clauses. So for instance, if we are to make the sentences express complete thought, then we can have it sound like in the sentence that we have. Juma is the boy whose bag was stolen. So again, looking at the adjectival clause who jumped over the fence, we can as well come up or construct a sentence that is expressing a complete thought using that adjectival clause. So we can say that there is the boy who jumped over the fence, or John is the one who jumped over the fence. So yeah, that is why the examples that we are giving are not expressing complete thoughts, because we are interested in the formation of the adjectival clauses. So it is after learning how we can form them that we can now go ahead and use them in sentences. So apart from the two patterns that we have discussed, that is the two patterns that we can use to form adjectival clauses, we can also use punctuation marks. That is, we can punctuate an adjective clause. So before you decide to use a comma, you have to decide whether the clause is essential or non-essential. So the essential ones require commas, while the others do not. So again, there are also some examples that we have here in sentences. Tahmid, which people don't like. So you can see we have got commas, two commas in that sentence. Tahmid, comma, which people do not like is often fast. Then in the second sentence, the new boy who everyone likes is my favorite student. So the first example has a non-essential clause, while the second has an essential clause, and that is why we have commas in the first one and we do not have commas in the second sentence. So dear students, that brings us to the end of this session, and I believe you have gained. Until next time, bye.